And welcome to another edition of Wit, Wisdom, and What Matters Most. It's a podcast with Monetta's guest, Freeman Troyer team. My name is Kyle Luetters, joined alongside Danton Troyer. And Danton, very, very special guest today. You want to kind of give our listeners a little bit of a preview of who we're going to be talking to today?
Yeah, certainly. I won't take all the thunder, Tony, but we have Tony Martignetti on our podcast today. And he's provided guidance and excellence and some coaching in the executive realm. And so we really want to get his perspective on what he's seen and what's worked well. And so today we're going to be talking about when success creates new risk. But before we get into that, Tony, I want to give you a minute. Just give us the details. I know you got a pretty interesting background, so I want to make sure you get an opportunity to share that.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. I've spent 25 years working in the trenches in finance and strategy in the biotech and high-tech industry before making the leap into the world of leadership development and leadership advisory in Inspired Purpose Partners. I've written now 3 books. My 3rd book's coming out in the fall of 2026. It's called Illuminating Hidden Brilliance. And I love the work I do now. It's been quite a journey, but all worth it.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, 3 books. That's pretty impressive on its own, and then everything else. So, one of the things we want to talk about today is, when success creates new risk. And so, I mean, I would say, personally, you've had success as well. And so maybe sharing some of those stories, but also, the folks that you're working with and what you've seen. So, the first topic we're talking about is, why does success really increase complexity? And I think we all kind of know that big picture, but the devil's in the details and what really starts to come out. And so we've talked about that a lot, but what have you seen from that perspective?
Yeah, it's one of those things where more money, more problems.
Yes.
But the reality is, it's when you are successful, what happens is it doesn't simplify things. It becomes a multiplier because you have more surface area to deal with. And, with every additional dependency you have, more people are relying on you. And, you've got to find ways to find leverage in what you do. And that is, when I say leverage, there's so many elements of that. How do you find ways to do things simpler for you, but also find ways to outsource what's really not meant for you to do? AI has been a great addition to the workforce, but be careful what you put into the AI elements. You can't let go of the things that are essentially you, because that's what people are relying on. What you do that creates the amplifying effect of who you are is essential. And so you need to make sure that what is it that created my success, and how do I ensure that I'm keeping that to me and not outsourcing the essential parts of who I am.
Tony, as you start to work with folks, and this is a great thread to go down, but do you find people have some difficulty with becoming self-aware of knowing when they need to start reducing some of the things that they're necessarily deciding on day to day? And it's probably different for everyone, but is there a certain aha moment that a lot of people reach when they realize, hey, I've got to throttle back, or I've got to get myself extricated from some of these things?
Definitely. And I see it most of all in founders who have started a company. They see themselves as the essential piece of the business. The problem is that if they don't extract themselves from the core parts of the business, they're going to find themselves in a really tricky situation, especially when they go to exit. Because when you go to exit a business and all the things start and end with you, and you try to find a way out of that, the valuations are actually starting to be connected to who you are, and that's devaluing because they can't extract you out of the business. And so you need to be thinking about, what am I doing day in and day out, and how do I process and start documenting the things that I'm doing, so that I'm ensuring that long term I'm finding people who can start to bring, I can start to outsource to them the things that are important, but not necessarily essentially me. Now, eventually, as I don't want to be contradicting myself here. You want to make sure that you're still adding value in your own way, but when the time comes for you to step away, you have someone lined up to be a great successor for that business.
I mean, one of the things you touched on there, kind of both sides of the AI piece, and making sure that how it's fairly new, I guess, to the marketplace. But what are you seeing as far as especially leadership, where maybe you do want to take some of that and shift it towards AI, for example, to help with some of those tasks, but you still want it to be you. And so, have you seen maybe some successes in doing that? But I've got some failures as well. I've seen as well. But what have you seen as far as like really good leadership starting to use AI to just branch out?
Yeah, I mean, one of the best ways I've seen this happen, and it's not just about the individual; it's actually teams.
Hmm.
Is I when I work with teams and use AI, I say, look, invite AI into the room, let it be part of the conversation, but don't just abdicate all of the okay, what should we do, or what is it? What are the notes? I let it be the empty chair. What did we miss? There's the old analogy of the stakeholder that wasn't there, but how do you let AI be the one that, what did we not have in the room that needs to be said? What wasn't said?
Yeah.
And the same thing goes true for the individual. Don't let AI be the, oh, you're so great type of conversation. Let it be the one that says, look, what am I missing? What is the thing that I'm not saying that needs to be said? And let it challenge you. In fact, train your AI to be confrontational to you. Because if you keep on
Wonderful. I'm
letting
going to
it
have
be
more
like,
people argue
oh,
with
you're
me.
great.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I feel like a lot of times they just reiterate what you said and like take you down that path. And I found myself saying, no, 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 I want you to give me the contradictory. I mean, especially in this day, like social media, I mean, you're just reading something, you're like, is that true or not? And I'm like, tell me the reasons it's not true and the reasons it is true. Cause nothing's, no, I say nothing. Most things aren't black and white these days as well. So I love that analogy. It's great.
Yeah.
I want to shift gears just a second, kind of talk about the human element thing. You mentioned successor.
Yeah.
And so in leadership, especially with founders, folks that are in the C-suite in businesses, how soon do you typically work with people on identifying that next person, that next, you know, key component to what's going on with the business or the organization? Like we always hear like start sooner rather than later, but typically like what are you finding is an applicable runway for
Yeah.
having that person ready?
Mm.
It really does depend on the nature of the business. I mean, there are some businesses where turnover is happening so rapidly that you almost want to be starting from day one.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that is really the best way to think about it. How do I, first of all, understand the nature of what I'm in right now, but also think what's on the horizon, because things do happen so quickly these days that we need to be ready for just about anything. So I would say the earlier the better. I'm not going to say, oh, it should be three weeks after you get into the job or 3 months, but I would definitely, don't be too slow to plan for that, because you find yourself in a situation where medical situation or just accidents happen, things happen. You want to be having a plan so that you don't have your business falter and create a path that just isn't, it's not tenable.
Hmm.
Because think about all the people relying on you, not just
Yeah.
your customers, your employees, all
Mm-hmm.
the people who are at the stakeholders are in the room, that
Mm-hmm.
or the ones that aren't in the room, who are going to be relying on where your business is adding value. So it's almost great to have that insurance in your back pocket, to know that I've got people here who, if I had to step away for an extended period of time or forever, could step in and do the work.
So as you're seeing folks kind of progress through this, from startup to, I don't want to say unsuccessful, but as they're experiencing more and more success, are there things like certain risks you're seeing that are starting to maybe creep in that maybe you don't see right away, maybe it's too late? Are there things that you're seeing that kind of change as you do get more and more successful?
absolutely. I mean, when I think about the risks that are on the horizon, I mean, let's start with the geopolitical risks. There's a lot of political risks that, as you go into new countries, and not that every company that I work with is global, but there's always the idea that if you're taking a product globally, you've got to think about, where are my products being made?
Hmm.
Where's the supply chain being managed? Because the moment something happens and you've got, a kink in the armor, you've got to figure out how you're going to pivot when that happens. So there's a supply chain risk, there's the political risk, there's the AI risk, which definitely is something that you want to manage and not do it in a way that's going to put you, having a situation where you're letting people go and then you're like, I got to hire people back.
Yeah.
And then you're having that the PR risk, which is, how do I make sure that whatever move I make is going to be viewed in a way that the public will understand what I'm trying to do and how I'm doing it. Not that you have to appease every person and every stakeholder in the right way. I mean, I always come back to some of the biotech leaders I worked with who would always be worried about, okay, well, if a patient dies, what happens? Or if a clinical trial fails, how are people going to view it? Sometimes you have to educate people too, to let them know that, look, you need to understand the business fundamentals of how this works. And that's important too. Don't necessarily go on the whims of everything that happens externally and panic. Instead, understand how to educate people around you about what is important.
We talk about risks to leadership, and one of the things I have always kind of found, whether it's people I followed or studying others, Kurt Signetti comes to mind at the moment. Describe the role of authenticity in leadership. And
Yeah.
because I think that's a huge element when you're trying to influence and follow people. So if you could just touch on that a little bit and what you've seen.
Yeah, such a great topic, and one that is constantly in the news. People say, "Look, authentic doesn't mean I have to be putting all of my dirty laundry out in the open," and that's not what we're advocating for. And I'm a big proponent for being authentic, but authentically in a way that serves others.
Right.
And that means inside and out. If you're going to be authentic, don't go out there and tell people all of the things that are happening in your inside world and the drama at home or what have you. But do something like tell people what you believe, and let that belief be something that's going to serve the people who are going to be operating with you. What you don't know and how you're going to mitigate that risk, if you will, or the things that you're not aware of, but you're doing something to actually move anyway in that direction. Because people will get behind you when they feel like there's confidence behind the humility. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, as so we're talking about teams, and obviously, you work with a lot of executives, and that's how we met, is working with executives, but in different ways.
Yeah.
So, if you're an executive, and we were just talking about all these different risks, you're building a team around you. What's the maybe not best, but what is a way to that coordination amongst all these folks that can bring value to you? Does that reduce your risk? I mean, and how have you seen that actually like come into play in real life?
Yeah, and now we're getting really juicy here, because this is not something at the core of why I think it's so important.
Yes.
There's two things that I love doing with teams. I like to get them to really explore the parts of themselves that they don't necessarily bring in the room, and do it together, because there's a sense of bringing the identity of who I really am, but doing it with others allows them to connect more deeply, because when they allow themselves to see each other, they can then find ways to get each other's back and to move forward more productively. Whereas if they close off with each other, the C-suite is moving in a way that says like, okay, I'm going to protect my own, or put a boundary up, then ultimately what's going to happen when the chips fall and things are, in a challenging time, it's going to be a situation where everyone's going to be, land grabbing or doing things that are going to protect their area. And that's unhealthy. You need to make sure that team is united. But in order to be united, they have to be connected and truly understand who's at the table.
Hmm.
We talk an awful lot about how important culture is, and team building is extremely important, and that happens over a long period of time. However, sometimes we don't have, runway to galvanize everybody. Is there anything that in your research and in your time, Tony, that you've realized that, for leaders out there, for C-suites, if I need a real quick shot, almost of like penicillin for this team building aspect, what are some quick things that you've noticed over time that great, effective leaders do to kind of, circle the wagons, gather the troops together in a quick way to triage a situation while we work on the long term?
Yeah, and there's a couple of questions I often ask people and get them to ask their people too, which is to say, what is lighting you up these days? What are the things that are giving you the most hope at this moment? That's the first question. And then the other one is, what is the thing that's really challenging you? You want people to feel comfortable and safe to be able to bring their risks to the table. Because if they're not going to bring that openness in, then you're going to have people clamming up, not really sharing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to be stuck because you're not going to hear the truth from the people around you. So that's the second question. And the third thing is, if you were the one who's making the decision today to lead us forward, what would you do? What is the thing that you want to see us do next? So 3 simple questions, but obviously there's a lot of really deep understanding that comes from them.
Yeah. I mean, I love those questions. I just had lunch with, one of the people on our team today that, I hadn't spent enough, he's new, so I hadn't spent enough time with him. And it's just, I think that is the point. And two, I mean, at some point we're going to have a pretty big market correction or whatever, something's going to happen. And we're all going to be here probably working late and like dealing with stuff we don't want to deal with. But I think to your point, like if you've got that connection, it makes it a little bit easier to come to work and get those things done versus it's like, oh, I don't even want to spend time with this guy to begin with.
Yeah.
It's just not enjoyable. And it's not going to be as efficient as well. So I love those questions. I might have to steal a couple of those.
Oh, it's all good. And I'll just add one other thing. It's like, you think about those times. I always think about this concept called conversational intelligence, which comes from a woman by the name of Judith Glazier. And her concept is that everything happens through conversations. Mm-hmm. And there are 3 levels. There's transactional, positional, and transformational. Well, oftentimes, especially when things have to be done quickly, we have to be like, okay, it's a yes or no, or just give me a quick answer. And that's fine when you need that. But we got to make sure that if something's really different, it's a big, profound conversation, we have to give it the time and build the trust to make sure that we've built the foundation for those things to happen. And then when you come back to we need a quick answer, people are going to remember that we've had the deeper conversation before, and they're not going to react like, wow, that was pretty rude, Danton. Why did you say it like that? Well, they're not, because you've already done the groundwork to know that they get where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Make sense?
No, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm in general a more direct person, so I have to make sure that I've done those other things. Otherwise, people are like, you're just a rude jerk. If I don't take time to do the other stuff, I'm like, yeah, I understand, but I don't mean to be that way. I promise.
Yeah.
It touches on that topic of like that emotional capital, and you're placing deposits with folks along the time, because at some point you will probably have to make a withdrawal of some sort. Danton mentions, where we have I'm thinking back to like this, we're recording this in 2026. In the spring of 2025, things went sideways and a handbasket. I won't use another word because even though this is a podcast, I don't want anybody to bleep anything. You did have to lean on people. And I think that's a hallmark of good leaders. I think they realize that in certain situations, they are going to have to lean on people, and it may not be the most pleasant thing. But to your point, Tony, and what Danton was describing too, you've made enough of those deposits over time that when it comes time to make a withdrawal, you're basically not drawing the account into the red. And in the red with people is a big problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's when you start losing people.
Right.
Especially in those tense times. You know,
Yeah.
you don't, you know, if you're just coming in red hot and you haven't built the foundation, haven't built the social capital, emotional capital beforehand, then what's happening is people are like, yeah, you know what
You're
you can
nuts.
do. You can go away.
Yeah, right.
So what do you find, Tony, in your work? What do you find are the key hallmarks of team building activity? Because, my wife and I do premarital counseling with folks, and we often talk about like how you build something together. And like men and women are very different, obviously. Men do think, if you didn't know that, spoiler alert. But research has found like men bond through like activity, like shared physical activity. Women bond in a different way. And then you add a whole entire element of, hey, we work together. So is there anything that you all have found in your research when you're doing these books and your coaching that is good, almost kind of all season team building that folks can implement?
Well, it's there's two parts to this. And I'll say the starting point is get people out of performative mode and into play mode.
Okay.
And we still have to play when we're adults, because one of the things about that is that when people are in performative mode, there's still an element of competing and wanting to be perfect, and we're not really in the mode where we're allowing ourselves to be a beginner again. But when you drop that and you get into play, what happens is you're willing to screw things up. You're willing to see what happens in doing it together. And so the move I often make, and this is where I do a lot of art-based activities with people. The moment I say it, people have panicked because they're like, "Oh my God, we're going to do that." And the level of experience varies. I mean, some people haven't touched a pencil or a crayon or any of those markers since they were kids, and that's okay. We're not looking for people to be artists. What we want them to do is to just get themselves out of their head and just drop into their heart and just play with each other and see what comes out. And through that, a lot of things happen. Some things that they never thought of show up, and they're in conversation with each other on another level. So I think that is one of the most fundamental moves I love doing with people in a team building activity, because it allows them to communicate in a way that they haven't before.
Yeah, I mean, I like that, and I do it not because I thought of it that well as you kind of just said, but we try to do team events that are fun, and to your point, now that you've kind of said that, it's like, oh yeah, we do have like really good conversations in those moments that you're just not going to have at the office. So it helps kind of solidify. I guess we're going to have to do another team event here shortly, so everybody will be happy about that.
There's a big difference.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between drawing something or like getting out of an escape room together versus, so there's a lot of validity to that. What do you see as some warning signs? I mean, I know we've kind of had a wide ranging conversation here, Tony, but what are some warning signs that internally for leaders they need to pay attention to? Because when we all get on an airplane, they tell us to secure our masks first and the loss of cabin pressure. So if leaders aren't taking care of themselves, that can, to your point earlier in the conversation, have ripple effects across the organization. But what are some warning signs that you see a lot of in leaders they don't recognize until maybe it's too late?
I always think about the first two signs that are really important for them personally, and that's burnout and boreout. And burnout has so many different ways of showing up. Like you're just going through your days and just feeling like, oh gosh, like this is just not sustainable. And, I'm not even looking forward to going the next day, or, I'm finding myself just going through the motions. And boreout is kind of one that you don't often see expressed in this way, but like you're doing great work, but your heart isn't in it. Your spark's gone, and you just kind of like, yeah, whatever, it's just another activity, another thing. And you just kind of, you're not really giving it your all.
Yeah.
And so I'm always trying to challenge people to say, when was the last time you felt fully alive in your work, or when you felt fully alive in your life? And try to find that kernel of the spark so we can reignite it, get it back into the game. And when you do that, how can you invite other people to do that same thing? In my book, my next book that's coming out in the fall, I talk about this idea of being the lighthouse. Well, the lighthouse is not about burning the brightest. It's about guiding other people in, but also being sustaining. And I think that's where we need to be careful. How are you sustaining your light first and foremost, and then allowing other people, guiding other people into that and helping them to sustain it? And so I think that's a key part of it. But also, when you think about the people around you, when you start not hearing as much from them, and then when you do hear from them, it's mostly negative. Well, maybe it's time for you to do a check-in and say, what's working, what's not working, the trying to find out, get a pulse of what's truly going on. And one last thing, because I know I'm rambling, but
I like it.
Keeping in mind that you are the thermostat for that room, and you want to make sure that you're setting the temperature appropriately. Because if you show up and you're constantly, low and kind of head on down, then people are gonna kind of follow that. They're gonna be like, oh, well, if he's checked out, then maybe I should be checked out too. Or if you are constantly on fire and constantly yelling, then guess what? You're going to get yelling back.
Yeah.
So remember, you set the temperature. Be the temperature that you want.
That was kind of leading to the next. Are there things you can, before you get to that point, are there things you can proactively be doing to make sure you are setting the right tone? Because you go day to day, and it can be hard to like step back and like, oh yeah, I haven't said anything to my staff, or I haven't talked to anybody. I just kind of go through the motions, and you kind of lose track that you've been doing that for months, years. Like you just don't think about it. So there's things you can do to proactively make sure you're staying on that path that we want to be on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Tony, we've mentioned a lot of things in this time period. There's a wealth of knowledge that you have, and you continue to mine and dig deeper. If folks wanted to learn more about your work, they wanted to pick up some of your books, where can they find you? Where is the best place to connect with all things Tony?
Okay, I'm going to give you 2 spots. Number one is my website, which is tonymspeaks.com. Of course, with my last name, you just can't, get the full last name.
Completely get it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the other spot would be to go to LinkedIn. That's where I'm kind of my home ground. I get a lot of activity there, and I share a lot of insights. Always in this with the intention of helping people to add value. And that's all I'm there for. And my LinkedIn is Tony Martignetti with a 1 at the end, not an I.
Very cool. Very cool. I love that. Well, Danton, also too, speaking of where you find things, where can folks find us as far as this podcast and other things, Danton and Kyle?
Yeah, our podcast has its own site, witwisdomandwhatmattersmost.com. Probably the easiest way to find us. And similar, Tony, we operate on LinkedIn and at monetagroup.com as well if you need us professionally as well. So those are probably the easiest ways to reach us.
Well, Tony, we, on behalf of Dan and myself and the entire staff here behind the scenes, want to say thank you very much.
Yes.
Folks will not know the scheduling perils that we went through. This has been a highly anticipated podcast, but we're so grateful that you made some time for us today. So we appreciate it very much, and amazing to learn more about your story.
Yeah.
Very grateful. Thank you.
All right, folks. Well, that was another edition of Wit, Wisdom, and What Matters Most. It is a production of Monetta's Gast Freeman Troyer team, headquartered in St. Louis, Missouri. Until next time, enjoy what matters most.
Thank you for listening to the Wit, Wisdom, and What Matters Most podcast. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit our website at witwisdomandwhatmattersmost.com to learn more and find additional ways to connect with us in the show notes. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional before making a decision. Investment advisory services offered by Moneta Group Investment Advisors, LLC, an investment advisor registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training. The information discussed in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and represents the views and opinions of the guest and/or host and does not necessarily represent the views and opinions of Moneta. You should consult with an appropriately credentialed professional before making any financial, investment, tax, or legal decision. Past performance is not indicative of future returns. All investments are subject to risk of loss. Please see disclosure for additional information.